What's up everyone, Lance Hedrick here, and today we're going to take a look at the updated Linea Mini. The Micra was kind of a conundrum for a lot of people. Why would La Marzocco release something that directly competes and potentially cannibalizes with the market of the Linea Mini? It was a smaller footprint, cheaper price, and for home enthusiasts was more than enough for what they needed with the same form as the beloved Mini. Is this worth it? Is it actually good? Is this better than the previous Mini? Is it actually doing what we all thought it would do? It looked like they were kind of anticipating this new launch, obviously, with that beginning of the year price raise. Feel free to use time cues below to skip around. I like to be very thorough, especially with the more expensive products in my reviews. Now this one was sent to me on loan from La Marzocco. I said previously I'd be buying everything for my channel, everything I review, but I did leave a caveat in that proclamation that I would be open to receiving loans for some of these machines that are a bit more expensive than I can really afford. I'm not telling them anything before I film this, and let's be real, there are going to be some criticisms in this that they likely are not going to love. Now, if you're familiar with the original Linea Mini, you can tell that there are some big differences around the back of it, but in the end, the form factor is the same iconic type of design. The front is where a lot of those big changes come from. So we see that the two knobs, as well as the paddle here, have a new soft touch finish. You no longer have that glossy plastic, nor do you have that kind of wood. It feels really nice, it feels very premium, and I really enjoy the matte black look. And they feel a bit tighter on the knobs, which I enjoy as well. Now I know for a while outside of the US they've been shipping the Cool Touch Steam ones stock on Linea Minis, but in the States it was a $700 upgrade to get it. Now it's stock across the board everywhere, you get Cool Touch Steam one. Why the heck did they opt to put plastic there? Kids were helping their parents make like a baby chino or something, they may grab it. And whereas this part's completely fine to grab while it's incredibly hot, this part, if it's stainless steel, gets really stinking hot and can burn you. And so their idea was, okay, well, let's replace it with plastic, which won't get hot, and then you're good to go on both of them. In addition to that, they say that this tip actually made it easier to froth milk. I think that is propaganda because milk's always easy to froth with any steam wand, especially if you fall halfway in a quarter, but you know, it is what it is. If you haven't watched that video, where you're living under a rock, Patrick Star. But anyway, the tip is interchangeable with the stainless steel. They actually send a stainless steel with it as well, so you can switch it out if you fancy, you know, not having that black plastic look. It still has that massive 3.5 liter steam boiler, completely overkill for a home user, but great for a commercial setting. They now have a timer. Finally, hallelujah, am I correct? Finally found a way where they were able to integrate it well with their brand language. In addition, they have the symmetrical pressure gauges now. They have one for the pump pressure and one for the steam boiler pressure. They've also added a floater inside of the drip tray, which was an addition they made to the Micra, with a lot of machines have that, so it was about time they put something like it, so you can see when the drip tray is ready to be dumped. If you're letting this fill up enough to need to be dumped, holy cow, that thing is gonna be some rancid water, because this is huge and it'll take you 4,000 weeks to really fill it up. That's like telling you to go take a shower because you're probably a disgusting human. This gauge is actually thinner than the previous one. This is 2 millimeters, while the previous Linea had 3 millimeter gauge. That to me just looks less robust. Now, not a big deal. It's not gonna change functionality at all. It just, I just liked the thicker gauge. It just looked a little nicer. That 14 gauge was like, The back panel is no longer chrome. They have it as the same color as the machine, which I absolutely love. I hate that chrome background, which the Micra does have. And then, of course, next up is something a lot of people get a bit annoyed about, which I didn't really go over much in my Micra review, even though they launched it there, which is this plastic addition to the Portafilter.
Oh, I'm spending so much money on this machine. I don't want plastic on my portafilter. I want the iconic stainless steel spouted portafilter.
Instead of getting two different portafilters, bada bing, bada boom, you got 2 in 1. The reason they did it for the Micra is they were shooting for super fast heat up times. And that big hunk of stainless steel for the spouts really kind of slowed down the heat up. They wanted to use it again here for that same reason. They increased the thickness of the cap of the brew boiler in order to improve temperature stability. But that added thickness is more thermal mass, takes more to heat up. So it's almost like they took the mass from here and put it in the boiler where it's more important for that thermal stability. Now for the Micra, they also made this decision so you'd have more cup clearance on the drip tray. Now, of course, with this machine, you don't really need that space, but it is nice if you're using like an Acaia Pearl or a scale that doesn't cost $300. Now, personally, I don't really ever use spouted, period, but if I ever wanted to for maybe turbo shots that are really messy, or any type of espresso shot that is really fast flow and can make a massive mess, I can just toss this on in a couple seconds, boom, I put it in, no mess. And then to clean it is much easier than those gasketed spouts. You just boom, boom, wash it under hot water. Look, it's so open, it cleans incredibly quickly. You can wipe the underside of the basket without having to pop it out, and you're good to go. All of their portafilters, their nakeds and everything are chrome plated brass, but that spouted one is all stainless steel. People despise this weird chunk of metal here and here, which I also get. I think that looks pretty ugly too, to be honest with you. But the good news is it looks like you wouldn't be able to set it straight for a tamp, but because this side comes down just as far, it sets very level on a table for you to tamp, so that's nice. Now with the machine, you do get a few different filter baskets depending on where you're at. It's like 14, 17, 21 grams, something along those lines. And you're able to mess around with your doses, your depths, etc. Within the app, this is where a lot of technological advances have come, so we're going to quickly look at this. So when we look at it, we have status we can click on. It shows the coffee boiler is at 91 Celsius, showing me live time, and I have the steam power off. So we can click that on pretty easily by clicking that little steam button up there. Now there's steam power 1, 2, and then 3. And the pressure on the steam boiler, don't worry about that. If it's like not really moving much when you switch it, don't worry. It's kind of just numbers assigned to the powers. The powers do change quite drastically. I'm always at 3 because I go hard in the paint. You have power options, which also obviously have auto standby and scheduling. You have settings, information, time format, brew by weight, which we'll get to in a second. By the way, spoiler, you have to have a very specific branded scale by Acaia to do it. You can do temperature, which goes from 85 to 104.5. Obviously, you can go higher because it's in a pressurized boiler. I have it set at 91. Steam power, you can slide from 1 to 3, and then degrees can be in Celsius or Fahrenheit. Then we go down to pre-brewing and pre-infusion. Now, I have pre-brewing clicked on here. Now, this is actually a big difference from the previous model and this one, is the capability to do what's called pre-brewing. Now, before I explain it, let's go ahead and pull this shot, and we're going to see what's happening. So I have it set for 6 seconds of pre-brew and then a 9-second pause. So we're going to watch. I turn it on. 1, 2, 3. You hear the pump? 6 seconds. It stops. But look, there's still stuff coming out. We didn't hear any exhaust. The solenoid wasn't enacted in order to release. So we're letting it go for 9 seconds and listen, boom, pump kicks back on and we continue our extraction. So we have a proper blooming phase right there, which we'll discuss here in a second. Let's let the shot finish and then we'll talk. There we go. Pulled a little 1 to 2 shot with a darker roasted coffee because of course we got to do a little charcoal for the video. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? I'm right. That is some thick boy crema. All right. Cheers. Like I was in Florence. Okay. So what is this pre-brewing? What does that mean? What is it? How is it different from the pre-brewing offered on previous generations? I'm going to read what they say, but then explain it because I was confused by what this says. Pre-brew introduces a small amount of water to the brew chamber, followed by an adjustable pause in brewing. This feature introduces a small amount of water in order to wet the coffee puck, allowing for a softer introduction of water before the desired static pressure is reached, helping reduce the chances of channeling. Controlling pre-brew using the app can be done by simply adjusting on-off times. Now, what confused me is it says, before the desired static pressure is reached, but that's not necessarily true. What it's doing is the pump is kicking on at full power. It is feeding water to the group head at full pressure. The puck won't experience 9 bar until the headspace is completely full, and then it starts to push against the tamped puck. That resistance and that flow gives us pressure. Now, if you had a 3-second pre-brew, yeah, it won't reach the desired static pressure. But what we just did definitely reached right at that 9 bar. I only did 6 seconds. If I did a full 9, it 100% would have reached 9. We probably reached 7 or 8. I don't have a Bluetooth transducer in there to really know. This only shows the pump pressure, so it's not giving me back pressure, so I don't know what the actual puck was experiencing. But the fact of the matter is you can definitely make it hit static pressure in the pre-brew. So the fact that it said before the desired static pressure is reached, that kind of confused me a bit, but once I started testing, it was very obvious that no, it is hitting static pressure in there if you give it long enough. So it's literally uninterrupted uninterrupted flow from the tank to the brew group, building up pressure until the ending of that time period you set. I did 6 seconds, so it did it for 6 seconds, pump went off. What they had was a single solenoid at the brew group, so whenever you did pre-brew and you had it shut off, it would open the solenoid and it would release into the exhaust system the pressure there. You would still have water in the group, but it was depressurized essentially, which could cause unseating of the puck and some other issues. But also a lot of that water that may have some goodies in it is kind of escaping. What they did is they added a second solenoid valve to the brew group. You may be going, well, what the heck is that? We won't get super into the weeds here because those of you who know solenoids and care about them know about them already. Those of you who don't know probably don't care about it, and there's no point in really digging super deeply into what they do. So what I'll do is I'll link below a great thread by a good friend and legend in the home barista world, Jake G. He wrote up a nice thread on Home Barista about how this new two-way solenoid that was added is working and what the point is there. And like I said, we won't get into that. Just know they added a second solenoid that does not lose any of that pressure in the brew group and allows you to reactivate the pump without unseating the puck or anything like that. We did 6 seconds, the pump was running, we pressurized the puck, we got the full saturation of the puck, and we allowed it to sit there and bloom with waning pressure. Of course, the pressure is going to decrease because, well, the basket's on a closed system. There's a ventilated side on the bottom where it can dissipate pressure. So as the liquid's coming out, it's depressurizing, but it's not unseating because the pressure is only being able to escape that way. It's not able to get back into the machine. So it allows for really nice blooming shots. I was excited. I was really stoked. Blooming shots, stock on a Linea, fantastic. I love it. Thank you. Now I was bummed when I pulled the app out. I turn on pre-brewing and the time options came up. The set ranges from 2 to 9.9 seconds. I'm like, bruh, you're gonna put me in a box like I'm a friggin' mime? What are you doing? That is silly. Like, come on. Fine, I probably wouldn't do that long of a pre-brew anyway. I just want to saturate the puck, honestly. That's what I want to do. I want to saturate the puck as quickly and efficiently as possible. Now, some of you who are maybe new to espresso or just want this because it's La Marzocco, which, okay, I get that. It's a trendy thing. There's so much you can do with more time on the bloom. In fact, the original blooming espresso that we kind of know about has a 30-second delay before you restart it. And so this isn't even allowing you to replicate the original blooming kind of shot. Why? They said, well, they don't want to confuse customers. I enjoy La Marzocco. It was, they're beasts. You know, I recommend them all the time when I'm helping wholesale clients because, I mean, I have to do commercial stuff. That's why I don't review commercial things here. But it is a bit frustrating when you assume idiocy on the part of the consumer. It's already hidden in an app, and a lot of people don't want to faff with an app, especially those who aren't that into coffee. Those who are, they're going to want to experiment and they're going to know what this pre-brewing stuff is. I don't really like this kind of boxing it. It's, yeah, the capability's there, but we're not going to give it to you. If you're really scared people are going to mess with it and get confused, you can put it behind like an extra tab that says pro or something, and plebes aren't going to do that. So, and then the pros will, you know, the people who are like fancy themselves pros, you know, I can do this espresso thing. Yes, it's plumbable. So when you plumb it in, you can do what's referred to as the pre-infusion as opposed to pre-brewing. It doesn't use the pump to put 9 bar into the puck. It uses line pressure to saturate. So you have 2 different options there. I kind of prefer that bigger hit. So I prefer the pre-brew style where it's like bing, bang, bong. But I know a lot of people like that gentle pre-infusion because it's so traditional. What are you gonna do? You know what I'm saying? The Micra, they made the screw that can change the pressure of your machine very accessible. You take the top off, you can put a screwdriver down, and there's the screw looking up at you. You can twist it on and off. With this one, they made it even easier. They put it right on top. There's a Phillips head screw sitting right there. You twist one way, increase pressure, twist the other way, decrease pressure. If you are a really gifted engineer that really likes La Marzocco and doesn't mind making something, you could probably make some sort of suction cup something to stick right there that has a little Phillips head and can do it mechanically, you know? Who knows? People are crazy. I've seen much crazier stuff, much crazier modifications than that, so. If you want to do a decreasing shot and you want to like use your hand to twist as you're going, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and start the shot. It'll do the 6-second pre-brew, 9-second pause, and then I'm gonna mess around with the screw going counterclockwise to decrease pressure. So here we go. So there goes the pump, you hear it. And at 6 seconds, it'll turn off. Boop. So we had that initial, obviously a lot came out. I mean, this is a darker roast, so the fines migration is gonna cause it to slow down once it hits full pressure. But anyway, here we go. There we go. Now I'm gonna turn it down. Look at that going down. I'm just twisting it as it goes. Okay, boom. So actually I got all the way down. That's as far down as I could get. It was right around that 3 bar mark. It's actually a little better. I like it more dilute than this shorter shot. You could do no pre-infusion, no pre-brew. You can just disable both of those and do straight infusion, and you'll get what you get, and you won't throw a fit. Now, a big critique that the original had is there's a loud vibration from that pump, and when you use a rotary, you're expecting it to be a bit quieter. You know, it's not as bad as like the decent espresso machine or something with a vibratory pump that's not settled in there well, but it still has a vibration that shouldn't be as loud as it is. It seems they opted not to really concentrate on that part, which, you know, I wish they would. A lot of people have had to modify their machines to make it more quiet, and there's no real reason for it to be that loud, to be honest with you. Inside the machine, where we have the normal 3-way solenoid right behind the brew group, this is where they've moved the Gicleur, the flow restrictor valve. So for those of you that may not know what that is, flow restrictor valve is essentially a small aperture through which water is going to go in order to enter the brew group. Takes water's path from, you know, this big to, you know, like this big. So the aperture here is 0.6 millimeters. Now, typically they have 0.8 millimeters in the Linea Minis. They've never done down to 0.6. And the reason is because, you know, you could have scale issues, but also in commercial settings, you want that to have faster flow rate, yada, yada, yada. And so for them, they saw it as better to get a smaller aperture in there. Now, I'm going to chalk this up to the fact that they're likely using lots of really dark roast coffees when they're making decisions, and it's probably easier to dial in dark roasted coffees with slower flow rates. I'm not quite sure about it, but they were very happy and felt it was an accomplishment when they moved from 0.8 to 0.6, which lowers the flow rate quite a bit. Now the maximum flow rate coming out is around 6 grams a second, which is close to like the Lelite Mara X or one of those vibratory pump systems that's 5 to 7 mils a second unless you hack it or something along those lines. They're able to use this 0.6 stainless steel. They've upgraded the stainless steel, nicer Gicleur, because now they have put the Gicleur into the solenoid, essentially, where when the solenoid enacts, it kind of pulses, and it can knock free any debris or anything that might be accumulating. In fact, it's impossible for something to accumulate there, because it's essentially self-cleaning with every actuation of that solenoid valve. That is a very great feature because so many people don't realize the vast importance of the water they're putting in their machine. Your water is so important. You can mess your machine up. If you use distilled water, you're going to corrode your machine. If you use tap water, unless you're in a place with great tap, with low mineral content and nothing that's harmful to your machine, you're probably going to hurt it. So you need to be very specific about the water you put in here. I tend to recommend as a catch-all Dr. Pavlis's water. It starts at like 45 parts per million of potassium bicarbonate in your water with no general hardness at all. You can both evade corrosion, which is typically a fear when you have no general hardness, and you can evade all scaling. You add it to distilled water, you add it to reverse osmosis water, and bada bing, bada boom, you're never gonna have to worry about corrosion or calcification ever again. And if you want to add minerals to your espresso for the flavor, you can always make concentrates and add it post-brew because those minerals aren't really affecting the brew anyway. This is a saturated group, which was first introduced, I believe, in 1981 with La Marzocco, and the idea here is the brew boiler is literally connected to the group head. The heating element is right there. It's going to keep that whole group head very warm, very hot, so you have consistent brew temperatures, and La Marzocco does some of the best at that. This machine has the unique capability of turning off the steam boiler independently from the brew boiler. So if you just want espresso, you don't have to turn the steam boiler on, which is the biggest draw of energy, obviously. But the thermal testing is vastly different between just the brew group being heated up and the combination of the brew group and the steam boiler. I know, sad day. When you're just doing the brew group, it tends to miss the mark by 2 to 3 degrees, which is a pretty big miss. If you pull a shot, 30 seconds later, another shot, 30 seconds later, another shot, they kind of go around by a solid degree or so. In fact, my testing mirrors almost identically what Cafe Masher did. I'll put a link below to their article where they produce some of that data, just so that we don't have to get in the weeds here. They did it for me. I love those guys. Go give them a follow if you speak German. Even if you don't, the auto captions are great, but they do a great job on rigorously testing machines, so check them out below. I don't necessarily think you're going to lose that much by having the steam boiler off when it comes to taste, even with lighter roasted coffees, definitely not with darker. There's been this obsession with getting exact temps. Like we have the World Barista Championship protocol that Gregory Skay set up, and I understand that for competitions and for cafes, but for a home user, I would bet all the things in the world that people aren't going to tell the difference between a 94-degree shot that dips to 92 and a 93-degree shot that dipped to 91. It's just not going to happen. And if it does, I mean, the same can probably be said of aberrations from shot to shot because of a grinder inconsistency. Yes, it will perform differently. You need to take into account that it will be 3 degrees offset from your typical, from what you set it in your phone to. This is not me defending this. I think that there are probably ways they could have improved the thermal stability sans the steam boiler being on. The fact that they didn't, a bit disappointing. You would expect that of them because they're so big on thermal stability and they've crushed it ever since the early 80s. I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't test the Brew By Weight. I did not want to spend $450 on the scale to do it. Now you may be asking, what do you mean $450? They use Acaia Lunar. Yeah, they use the Acaia Lunar, which I have like 3 of. But you can't just use any old Acaia Lunar that already costs like $279 or whatever it is. You have to buy the specific La Marzocco Acaia co-branded Acaia that has the firmware, software, whatever to connect with the machine. They don't open source it, so there's no way to put any other scale to it. Too rich for my blood. I was like, no thank you. They have about a 0.5 plus or minus margin of error with that, which honestly is not any better than autovolumetrics when you have like a decent flow meter. Like what you have in the Sanremo U did just as good, if not a better job than that with its automatic flow meter. Bummer. If I get bummered in the city, don't go revenging in my name.
And there's also the La Marzocco and Acaia integration, which requires a Linea Mini with the...
Now I have a friend, Tate Mazer, who is a fellow coffee YouTuber, but he's an engineer, worked at Bellwether, now he's doing some other things, but he has been working on a Brew By Weight edition that you could include in other machines. He's tried it on a Linea Micra, I think, on the Rocket Stone and on some other machines, but I'm trying to get one from him to test out on my own, but his looks incredibly precise, and I'm very excited to get to try that out. His will obviously be open source.
So I just have to switch the brain connections out, and then it should work just fine.
I guess my TLDR would be this. I love the pre-brewing feature and the added solenoid. I think even though it might be a little over-engineered, it is an incredible addition to it and will make things a lot easier and will open up a lot more ways of brewing coffee. I do love the functionality of the app and the technology they've provided there with changing temperature, changing all these different things, but I do wish it was a little bit more tactile. Sometimes it'll lag and get slow and it'll take like a minute or two to do it. I love the new feeling here with the soft finish. I think it's a really nice addition. Shot timer, give or take for aesthetics as far as your preference, but I enjoy it and I think it was a necessary addition to have that timer. Thermal stability, fantastic when you have brew boiler and steam boiler on together, but when you have it independently, brew boiler does not perform as well when the steam boiler is turned off. I don't think that should scare you away from doing shots without the brew boiler on because this will eat up energy, especially if you're not steaming milk. There's no point in having that boiler on. Then of course we have the Portafilter conundrum, whether or not you love or hate this plastic thing. It helps with getting heating up to temperature more quickly and with thermal stability, and it also helps for me with cleaning. So you can just take it off clean, make it easy, plop it back on, good to go. Chrome brass as opposed to the stainless steel that the spouted pour filters typically are, and then you have the plastic tip on the steam one, which is interchangeable with stainless steel, but this is so it's cool touch all the way down. Arguably it has better steaming performance, but for me, I get soaking milky regardless, so what are you gonna do, baby? If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting the like and the subscribe. It would help this channel a whole lot. Check out my Patreon below. Whenever I actually buy equipment, which is the majority of the time, with the exception of this, obviously, I do competitions on there to have people in the Patreon win them because I use Patreon funds to buy my equipment. Bada bing, bada boom. It's like I buy, then we share, right? So go check that out. We have a Discord connected to it as well for all the paying members, and it's a good time. It's a good time there. So the links below, you know the drill. Thanks so much for watching. And you know what? I hope that you brew something tasty today. And cheers.